Hello. Right, we're going to start with, well, the start. We're going to talk about something that I don't think we talk about enough as a society. We're going to talk about relationships, but more specifically, we're going to talk about the relationships between straight people and gay sex. Now, I know we're British, these conversations are difficult. No sex, no religion, no politics, those are the rules. But we need to get past that because right here in this room, we are going to do all three of those things. So, we need to start off with a little bit of a warm-up, a spot of foreplay, if you will. So, if I just need us to get used to that word sex, not sex or sex, but sex. So, after three, I just want us all to shout that word at me so we can all get used to it. So, 1, 2, 3, sex! There we go. More people joined in than I thought I would, but often that's the best way for it. You need to sort of strap yourself in for this one because we just need to get used to it all because we don't have a healthy relationship with sex in this country, and we definitely don't have a healthy relationship between understanding the difference between straight sex and gay sex. It's something taboo. It's something we don't talk about. So Sex and Sensibility, we're obviously referencing Jane Austen, a big fan, possibly, of gay sex. We don't know, but we'll put it down as she is. She wrote her book, and it was called Sense and Sensibility. That was her original book, but it was published under a slightly different title. It was published as Sense and Sensibility, a novel by a lady, and I think there's actually a very, very interesting dichotomy there between the very, very obvious, a novel, and the very, very hidden, the vague, by a lady. Now, a novel makes me laugh, just in case you're 20 pages in thinking this was the Argos catalogue, but what's more important is by a lady, anonymity, a hidden person, a missing person, a beard. This is very much the glory hole method of publishing a book. But she said something in there, she said something. It made me think of our gay community, the people that are hidden away. So if we sort of look at the first page of that book, I mean, as with many books, that is always the best page to start on. She begins in her book. She talks about the missing people, and she talks about what we don't talk about, what is in the room but not spoken about. And that's what's very, very interesting for us. She says, people behave in so respectable a manner as to engage the general good opinion of their surrounding acquaintance. And that's important because respectable in our society doesn't mean respectable, it means straight, it means normal. And because we're not straight, we're not normal, it doesn't engender respect. So let's do a little experiment in this room. If we just think about it, there's some facts and figures that goes around LGBT liberation. 10% is one figure that's said very, very often. It's said that 10% of people are LGBT. Now, that's a very high number. Germany's actually done some very, very in-depth survey data on this issue, and they found that 6.8% of their population identified as LGBT. So if we just do a bit of an experiment in this room, you know, it's not academic, but this also isn't an exam. I'd just like you to pop your hands up if you would be willing to out yourself as heterosexual. If you're willing to out yourself as straight, just pop your hands up in the air. So we're seeing a few hands going up. A few people have been practicing in the mirror, I can tell that. So pop your hands back down. Now, I just want you to put your hands back up if you could genuinely say that 10% of everybody you know in the world is LGBT. What about even 6.8%? You see, that's a huge number because the ONS in Britain found that only 2.8% of people identify as LGBT, but that is down the other end of the scale. That is a tiny number. That is a number so small that it cannot be possible. So where are our missing queer people? Where have they gone? Where, possibly more important, are they hiding? Because you see, we live in what's called a heteronormative society. We've had a talk about normal already, but our society thinks that straightness is normal, and thus straightness is respectable. Now, that's fine, but what it also means is that anyone that isn't straight has deviated from that path of normality. They've deviated from purity and they have embraced perversion, deviancy, hedonism. And if that's how we talk about gay people, if that's how we talk about queer people, perhaps it is no wonder that they behave in so respectable a manner as to engage the general good opinion of their surrounding acquaintance. It is not a surprise. Now, we can look at this. This penetrates really deep into our society. Let's look at something simple. Let's look at a fairy tale, for instance, something we give our kids. They follow a pretty simple format. You grow up and you meet a member of the opposite sex, Prince Charming, whoever. You fall in love, you get married, you have kids, you live happily ever after. That is the narrative tale of a fairy tale, but that is also the narrative tale of relationships in our society. Fall in love, have kids, live happily ever after. But let's imagine what a queer fairy tale would have looked like for thousands of years. It would have looked very, very different. Grow up, fall in love with a member of the same sex, get imprisoned, get castrated, get murdered. You can't, get married because of the murder, and you can't have kids because of, well, A, the castration, and B, you don't really need a biology lesson, do we? So if for hundreds of years queerness has been punishable and sex is simply a tool for straight people to make babies, then perhaps we have located some of our missing people. Perhaps they are living in so respectable a manner as to engage the general good opinion of their surrounding acquaintance. Respectable in our society remains a synonym for straight, and you can witness this because there's something that I've noticed recently over the past 2 years. It's that straight people, they love to talk about sex and relationships, but gay sex and gay relationships, they find that topic very impenetrable. So let's look at a recent case of coming out. Let's talk Philip Schofield. Philip Schofield, to the world 2 years ago, was straight. No one ever came up to me and talked about his relationship, and certainly no one ever came up to me randomly to talk about Philip Schofield having sex. But now he's come out, and everybody does. It's the word on everyone's lips. People are obsessed. Oh, do you reckon he's the man or the woman? Oh, how does he sit down on that sofa after a rough night? Those are the kind of things that people say to me. But let me stop you there. Why are you bothered? Why are you interested? Why has it become your property? And you see, in a heteronormative society, straight people engage themselves as the protectors of sex. They are the arbiters of sex and sensibility. And the reality is, our sex, gay sex, but even gay love and gay relationships, it offends their sensibilities. What do we do from there? But you can see it in person, you can see it a million times. Let's picture an office. Let's picture a water cooler and a normal conversation going on around it. Just like society, an office, it tends to have a heterosexual majority. And this heterosexual majority, they tend to love to talk about sex and relationships, just like everyone else. And they'll talk about it in massively graphic detail. I'll have women come up to me saying, oh, I'm trying for a baby. They'll tell me how many times a day they're trying, what positions they tried it in. They've got to tell me what they're putting in where, and they'll tell it me without me asking. There's going to be the boys. They've just been to Ibiza. They've come back. They're telling me about how many birds they've pulled. It doesn't mean much to me, but it means a lot to them, it seems. Lads, lads, lads. They get really into it, and they'll tell me. And people will tell me about what protection they're using. Lots of people tell me what protection they're not using as well, and that's normal. That's normal office chat. It's a normal conversation. But the second a gay person joins in, it changes. It becomes dirty. It becomes perverse. It becomes punishable. Now, I know gay people who've received warnings at work for talking about their relationships, and I know managers who have punished gay people for joining in conversations that the manager themselves were in. And this isn't an uncommon thing in my head. This happens every day in normal offices. But how is that fair? When we talk about straight people, they'll often say they use condoms to prevent pregnancy or they get the implant. That's called very sensible, and we all recognise that that's a sensible choice that people have made. But when gay people go on PrEP to avoid HIV, they're ostracised as hedonists. When the boys go away, lads, 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 they pull loads of girls. That's all very normal, boys will be boys. But when a lesbian dares to hold their partner's hands on the bus or a gay person displays public affection, we're said that we're ramming our sexuality down people's throats. And that's the dichotomy we've got here. We cannot live in the same way because people tell us that we are ramming our sexuality down people's throats. But that's not fair. Why are we not allowed to do that? But we're not doing that. We're told we just need to fit in. But actually, let's have a think about society. Let's just have a think about it. Society is obsessed with sex and relationships just so long as they are straight. If I turn on a film, there's a 5-minute scene of straight sex that adds literally nothing to the narrative, and that's perceived as normal. People talk to me about all sorts of sex. It's normal. I walk down the street and people are holding hands, they're kissing. It's normal. We can all agree that's normal. But the second a gay person does it, the second we join in, the second we try to fit in with society, we're told that we're ramming our sexuality down people's throats. We'll go back to Jane Austen for a moment. Jane Austen said, not about gay sex in a slightly different context, very different context. She said, one half of the world cannot understand the pleasures of another, but I don't really think I'm asking for people to understand my pleasures. It doesn't really matter if you don't understand. What I'm asking for is equality. I'm asking for an equality of perception. Why are they not perceived the same, because queer people, they faced ostracisation, they face this completely different discourse whenever they dare to do anything. So is it any shock, perhaps, that we have missing queer people? Is it any shock, perhaps, that people choose to behave in so respectable a manner as to engage the general good opinion of their surrounding acquaintance? Respectable remains meaning straight. But we need to be frank, there isn't much sign of this changing. There isn't much sign of progress happening. We can't, as queer people, wear our sort of identity as a banner of pride because it's been turned into a banner of sexual shame. We cannot join in the office banter, the workplace conversations, just the day-to-day holding hands in public, because it's ostracised, it's hedonist, it's sexual. But we can change that, because that is the world that has been wrought. We can make a new one. We can normalise an intersectional representation of queerness, wherein we understand that queer love and queer sex, just like straight love and straight sex, are different concepts. It is not to ram sexuality down someone's throat to hold their hand. We should cycle back to Austin one last time. I'll directly quote, so I'll have to change her words a bit, 'cause she was talking about sisters, not shagging. But she said, is it not possible that we, as communities, can live without disagreement between ourselves or producing coolness between each other? And to that, I say yes. But that change needs to start now.